largest and most prestigious advisory assignments in the country's post-liberalization era, including a disinvestment exercise for a portfolio of 26 government-owned hospitality assets, privatization of airports, and various other infrastructure projects. While Anshuman has had an excellent exposure in global and regional markets while enjoying long-standing client relationships, he's somebody who's played a prime role in assisting a large number of multinational corporations in establishing and successfully running their Indian operations. Under Anshuman's guidance, CBRE has successfully provided effective real estate solutions for a diverse range of projects in India and Southeast Asia. He's also advised various international real estate financial institutions and private equity funds on investments in the realty sector in the region. Also, Anshuman is very well-renowned leader at industry forums. He's a co-chair of the National Committee on Real Estate and Housing for the Confederation of Indian Industry, which is a CII, which is the largest industry board in India. He's also the member of CII's National Council. Also, he's been identified as the first chairman of the South Asia Board for RICS, and he's also a member of the American Chamber of Commerce in India and the India chapter board member of the Asia Pacific Real Estate Association. Thank you so much, Mr. Magazine, for joining us and giving us your valuable time. I'd now leave it to you on the stage and screen. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a bit embarrassing for that long introduction. I am a dinosaur, so sometimes it seems like, this introduction is long, and so sorry for the audience to, they had to have the patience to listen to all that. Yes, I've been around for too long, like I mentioned, and seen a lot, but hopefully next time the introduction can be less. But thanks again for inviting me. I just want to generally talk about what is happening in the real estate market, which most of you are from the real estate background, would have a very good view of what the current situation is. But I just want to give a very macro picture of what is happening in India. No doubt, COVID-19, like anywhere else, has played a havoc with our economy, with the real estate sector. But a lot of people here may not realize that India is still lucky to not being impacted as adversely as a lot of other countries have. I get a good view of our business in many countries. And believe me, India is still better off in spite of all the gloom and doom, in spite of, if you look at the stats in the real estate sector where there are a lot of people suffering, we are still better off than many countries. And the reason for that are many. I'll share some of them. One big reason, of course, is, which is not a one and a good reason, that we are behind as a country, both in where we are in the stage of development as a country, and the amount of infrastructure we require vis-a-vis our population, and even a real estate industry which has been evolving over the years and is now coming to a stage where it's maturing, but we still are far behind the level or the supply of real estate what is required for the size of our country. And that does benefit us in the sense that we don't grow at a fast pace, but then we don't fall at a fast pace also. If we look at the office sector, I'll start with that. This year, certainly, 2019 was an exceptional year. It was the best year ever as far as the office absorption was concerned in India. In fact, one of the highest in the world, where more than 60 million square feet of office space was taken up in India. There is, and this, if you look at historically, this was the highest in India. And then, of course, COVID happened this year. We were expecting a good year. But in spite of that, in spite of a drop in overall leasing activity or commercial activity in India, we've still done better than expected. What would benefit India going forward in the office sector specifically is that India is an established offshoring center for the world, with a record of delivering quality service at a competitive cost. That advantage continues. In fact, any company which wants to get access to skilled manpower at a competitive cost, And leaving alone the cost, just getting those skilled manpower, India is in a very strong position, thanks to our demography and thanks to our education system. Of course, that's another discussion what we can do with education system, but we still get a lot of engineers graduates coming out every year because sheer size of the numbers we have as a population, and therefore it will continue to be the back end for technology, for business process outsourcing for the world. And as COVID-19 has impacted the economies in the West, especially in the US, there will be more pressure on offshoring, which means that a lot of those companies will have to further expand in India to cut their costs and to remain competitive. So I certainly believe that this will be a big advantage, but also at the same time, excuse me, also also at the same time that it's not going to happen overnight, but we will see a faster recovery in our office sector than many other countries. Yes, there's a long discussion on work from home and how that's going to impact. I'll be very quick because that's a longer discussion. It will have some impact, but again, the way our infrastructure is, especially our digital infrastructure, the size of our houses, the way we are, a lot of people are still in joint families, plus young people. Large percentage of our people working in offices are millennials. All this, when you add up, people will be back into offices sooner than later, depending on how the COVID-19 situation develops. And I believe, therefore, in India, the office sector will continue to do well, but it will take time for it to come to the peak what we saw in 2019, which was an exception. But next couple of years, there will be enough activity in the office sector. Very quickly, residential, which is which most people are keen to always hear about. We have seen a recovery in Q3 over Q2, thanks to sales happening in especially the affordable category sector, thanks to some SOPs gained by the government. Also, there is end user demand, which is coming in. But the most important part of what has really helped in the recovery in the residential sector, whatever recovery we see, is the interest rates, the mortgage rates are at a 15-year low. And if you look at historically, when the residential market really took off in India for the first time, the big trigger was that was the first time, first of all, that there was mortgage available. And more importantly, when that interest rate fell from as high as 18%, coming down to 6.5% in 2005 to 7 years, that really triggered the big demand in the residential sector. And now we see a 15-year low on mortgage rates which have come down. And I think that's going to help us because we do expect the interest rates to be low. And as overall the prices of houses have remained flat or have reduced, both this will trigger the consumption in housing. Now, I'm not saying this is going to start a boom in the residential sector, but what it has done is that in spite of COVID, that market is still going on, and we will see incremental growth in residential sales going forward. Again, for it to come back to the peak levels will take time. So I do expect that the residential sector, especially in the affordable category, will going forward will do well. Yes, we still have challenges. There is a liquidity crunch overall in the sector. There are developers who may not be able to finish projects. That there is also an overhang of huge debt which has to be paid. So all those issues will remain and will take time to get what we call solved. However, in the meanwhile, thanks to again the interest rates being low and all the other incentives the government has given and other reasons I mentioned, that there will be a slow recovery in the residential market going forward. I'll be very quick. Retail, as has been mostly retail, hospitality were the most impacted, but we are seeing a slow recovery there. India again is undersupplied As far as organized retail is concerned, again, compared to our population, no doubt there are sectors or locations where there could be an oversupply. But if you look at overall, we are still an undersupplied market. So I do see slowly, which is already happening, that footfalls are coming back into the malls. And it will be, depending on what happens to the vaccine and what happens to COVID. But I do see an upward trend from now on the retail front, but it will obviously take longer than other sectors to recover, but it is bound to recover sooner than later. And the last couple of areas is logistics, which is this year is done outstandingly well, thanks to e-commerce activities and that there is big demand for warehousing, and we've seen that being one of the most active sectors. There is some activity in the data centers. Again, it's not large enough, but it'll pick up. So just to keep it brief, overall, there is still a lot of challenges, but I think we are in a recovery mode, and going forward, things will start picking up in from 21 onwards, and it will take, depending on which sector, it will some will take longer than others, but certainly the activity level, the recovery situation has started, and I feel worst is past us, unless until, of course, with the caveat that something else happens with the virus, etc. But I do expect better days ahead. So thanks. I'll stop. I can go on talking for a few hours, so I want to stop here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Magazine. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to be joined by Ms. Ritu Maurya, Editor-in-Chief, Entrepreneur Media India and Asia Pacific and Franchisee India, who's going to be joining in with Mr. Magazine for a fireside chat. Over to you, Ms. Maurya.
And thank you, Mr. Magazine. Thank you, Bhavna, for the introduction. And Mr. Magazine, what a wonderful forecast that you made for the industry as I was listening to it. And you've truly sort of given a glance as to how the recovery of the industry is likely to look. It was going to be one of my questions to you as to how do you think and which sectors do you think are going to see the first movement upwards. But clearly, I think the trends have shown that residential is something which has increased. I mean, since you mentioned about the interest rates being so low, do you also see some kind of some pegs of interest rate coming in the commercial sector also? While I know work from home and particularly technology companies giving lifetime work from home and all of that, but do you think the interest rates for commercial might also work in the near in 2021 or 22?
Yeah, see, certainly, the interest rates in commercial anyways have come down since the past. Of course, they're not as low as what you see in residential for obvious reasons, but we have seen overall borrowing rates have come down. One of the big factors for even foreign investment coming into commercial real estate or any real estate in any country is, which India always it was a deterrent, I would say, is that when foreign investors buy into real estate, let's say in any mature economy or country, advanced country, they put a certain equity and then they depend on the local debt to put in money because the debt is quite low. In India, the problem was that the debt was so high that anybody putting equity would really would have to put much larger equity. So from that point of view, when we say that return in India is higher, actually it came down for them because even if in a more mature economy, even if the return was lower, but then the equity investment was lower also. So the good news is in India, the cost of borrowing in commercial has come down, which is good. Although for foreign investors, I'm not sure it's still that attractive. It is definitely much better than before. But that is one of the reasons why we are seeing more investment in the commercial sector. So yes, to answer your question, it's already come down. I'm not sure for it to come down further may take time. It depends on how those are tied to a lot of other factors in the economy and what is happening. But certainly they've come down.
Sure. And I mean, on the other note, while I see that there is slow specks of recovery which are happening now for the real estate sector, as you said, residential and probably warehousing being a very large part of it as well. But I mean, particularly when you look down at smaller cities, there've been developers out there who've been doing some work in their own sort of cities and territories that they marked for themselves, which is very, very regional. How do you see their recovery happening? Do you see that there is a lot of consolidation and sort of asset restructuring that is likely to take place in the coming years as well? And so, what kind of trends do you see in that on that side, on merger and acquisition space?
Uh, Logically, anywhere in any country, when there is a decline in the market, or whenever the market is in the low side of the cycle, there is the consolidations happen, M&As happen, the bigger ones gobble up the smaller ones, and it works well for everybody. Historically, that has not happened in India, or I must
Mm,
say, it has not happened enough. There would be one or two examples, and that's again a long discussion why it hasn't happened. Because normally, so logically, in past it hasn't happened. It should have happened, and there are many reasons for that. Because again, legal issues, contractual issues, cleaning up the balance sheets are not easy in India, and many other liabilities and etc. However, this time, what is interesting, and that is a sign of a maturing market, is there has been more consolidation. So I do
mm,
expect more consolidations and M&As to happen. And they may not be M&A as such, because a developer buying another developer is, in India, it seems it's not easy, and it's very difficult. Whenever it's happened, generally speaking, has not been very successful because of various reasons. But I do see more consolidation happening than before, but not as much as would happen in a normal, or I would say not, in a more advanced economy. But we have, for example, if you see, so it's not an M&A and all that, but if you look at companies like Brookfield and Blackstone, GIC,
yes.
they have been buying part of the assets from the developers. Now, in the past, that would also not happen. So it's not a
Mm,
consolidation, it's not an M&A, but they are buying a part of the portfolio of developers who in the past may not have done that. They may have not sold it. And also in the past, maybe they didn't even, there were no companies like Blackstone and Brookfield and GICs of this world who could
right.
straight away say, look, we can give you $1 billion check and take the whole portfolio. So the market has matured from that point of view. And going forward, there will be more consolidations than we have seen in the past, but it's still a slow process. You talked about the tier 2, tier 3 cities. I think there it's more difficult. This will be more in the tier 1 cities. But eventually, of course, as the market evolves, it will percolate down to tier 2, tier 3. The problem with tier 2, 3 other cities is the scale is not there.
Right.
And the amount of work taken to, let's say, go to a tier 2 or 3 town and buy a portfolio, do mergers and all from outside, the scale is not there, and the incentive is not there. But they would be, of course, within those cities. I feel there will be consolidation among those players in those smaller cities, which is inevitable. That will happen, and I think the pace will improve going forward. It's still not where it should be.
And what kind of builders do you feel are going to be the early beneficiaries of such consolidation? I mean, what kind of portfolios, or just essentially what kind of business, I mean, astute business builders are likely to
See,
be able to
if,
take advantage of this?
if you look at the tier 2, tier 3 towns, most of the real estate businesses confined, or mostly confined to residential, because we
Mm,
still, there are of course some, depending on how you define tier 2, tier 3 cities, there are some cities where, if you say Pune is a tier 2 city, it's a big commercial hub. So, or if you look at
right.
Hyderabad, is a big, but even if you take out Pune and Hyderabad, a lot of other tier 2 cities are not a big commercial hub, right?
Mm,
uh, so it would be primarily in residential. And here, as you know, it's not a consolidation M&A like it happens in the West. It's more
right.
like one person will take up the land of the
Mm,
other. So someone has surplus land and doesn't have money to develop, he'll tie up with somebody else and say, look, let's do a joint development agreement and do it. So those kind of things will
mm.
happen. So I think it'll be primarily in residential.
Sure. And we're seeing all across there is digitization which is happening, in across sectors, a big digital transformation that is going to happen. So where do you see this digital transformation happening for the real estate sector, considering that it is such a man-oriented industry? It calls for construction, which you cannot take people out of it. So where do you see what parts of the industry will get digitized?
Hopefully, it'll also become a woman centric. You says man oriented. Hopefully, it's getting more and more women oriented, and we are uh, you know, I'm digressing, but very quickly, there are more women coming to the real estate sector, which is very good.
Good to see.
Which is very good, and it's going to increase. So I'm glad. But coming back to your question on digitization, I think from the services side, the digitization will be really more what I see. Although there's a lot of talk about prop tech, etc., but most of the prop tech I see is really in facilities management, where they're putting processes, systems, and improving how we manage assets, and how we can optimize costs and give better service. The other area, of course, is on the sales side, where there are a lot of softwares and systems, how to improve forecasting of sales, how do you get to more consumers, etc. And even digital marketing, social marketing. So all that is where are the big areas right now where this is happening. Of course, uh, on the other side, outside from the services company, I think where the digitization is required is land records and things like that. So wherever that has happened, we've seen there's a big that market has really benefited. So the government needs to really push on the digitization of land records. I think that's a major one, which will make it more transparent and easier to do transactions, and increase the will actually increase the number of people investing in real estate, and increase the transactions. So, but from the service, I just see what is happening right now more is on the sales and marketing side, and on facilities management side. Which, of course, when I say facilities management, this is more on energy saving, for example, is a big one there. That how do you? There's a lot of sensors which are coming in to save air conditioning costs, on the safety side, fire or others. So it's really more on managing buildings and all the technology and the systems which go through, where the maximum amount of what you call technology I'm seeing, which is really good. And on the marketing side, certainly it's a completely both on data management side to, like I said, social and other marketing, and using all the softwares, that has really come a long way. Even the websites, and earlier, if today you look at it, there's so many residential, so-called, put it simply, websites which are there, which are giving so much information out. And one big thing of technology, of course, is, I think, which is a big shift on technologies, there is more data available to people. So earlier, I mean, 20 years back or 25 years back, when I started, and for many years, you could not get information what's happening. So today, a consumer buying a house, taking space on a commercial space, or doing anything, can go online and get a lot of information. And that's how one end, which people don't talk about, where technology has helped, that you can really take an informed decision. There's a lot of information out there, and that's going to make our real estate industry more efficient.
Sure. And, um, so let me ask you this. Maybe it could be one of our final questions. I know time is short. So, I mean, governments across the world have taken a beating because of the pandemic. If you really ask me, I mean, while we look at industries and sectors, but honestly, it's the governments which have taken the maximum beating down. So, I mean, and you worked earlier on the airport projects. And so, do you feel that government infrastructure is going to be out there for privatization? We have already seen public sector units, public sector enterprises getting privatized. So, do you feel that particularly infrastructure which is created by the government, whether it's own government buildings or even heritage buildings or something like that, are going to be up for privatization? And then what is the real opportunity both for Indian builders as well as for international money to come and make investments in this?
Huge opportunity. I think the discussion of divestment and privatization of the government is going on for many, many years. That's how we got involved in privatization of Delhi Airport, Mumbai, almost all the airports were involved. And that is one, if you look at Delhi Airport, is one successful example of privatization.
Correct.
Otherwise, you would not see that nice road going there. There are offices, malls, whatever you see in the Delhi Airport is all the result of privatization. So there is so much more the government can do this sort of investment of and privatize. The good part is it is happening, of course, not happening the scale it should. So, for example, the government has given, if you look at all these highways which have toll, and it's in private hands, who collect the toll. So all that has helped in, not only building our highways, but also maintaining them. I think that is most important thing. When private, you can build a nice asset, but if you don't maintain it, you lose huge amount of money, and that life of that asset becomes less. So highways, airports, certainly the privatization helped. The government is still looking at airports, and we are involved in some of the projects, airports in tier 2 and tier 3 towns, which they're going to privatize. So that's very good. Then there are areas we are seeing, for example, we just won management of, I think in India, there's a martyrs memorial. So they gave us
Correct.
to manage the facilities of that. Even I was surprised, will the government outsource that? So what we are seeing is a good sign with the government, where they are realizing that they would need private sector for capital, no doubt, because
Mhm.
the government doesn't have that much capital, but also they need private sector for expertise and managing of their assets. So it is happening. It's a massive opportunity. I just wish the government could fast track it. Of course, government has its own constraints. There are still a lot of, so recently I'm just coming, even in the railways, as you know, privatization is happening of trains. Now,
Mhm. Correct.
almost 15 years back, we have worked in projects of privatization of railway stations, or if not privatization of the station, but at least, as you see, I think Delhi station is a good example, that there's a hotel there, there's retail. So all that is being developed. So the only challenge is, whilst the government is aware, there have been successful examples, but it has not been scaled up. So it's a very interesting question you ask, and it's a very good question. So massive opportunity. I just wish that government fast tracks it. It's going to bring in, it can bring in a lot of capital, at the same time give huge opportunities for private sector to participate with the government projects.
And do you see this happening, trickling down at state government level also?
Yes, in fact, surprisingly, some of the state, we have worked with almost 17, 18 state governments across India. And what is surprising is that some states, it's very active, that they've said, look, we want to privatize. Again, we got involved in privatization of a jail, not private, so relocation and redeveloping. So again, it was a government asset, two industrial parks, two special economic zones, etc. So it is happening at the state level. But if I look at it, I can't take names. Some states are really proactive and they're far ahead than a lot of the other states which are slow. So it is already happening. But again, a lot of still the scope is, I would say, humongous, and we're just still scratching the surface. So there is big opportunity if the state governments and others really come out and fast track it. Uh, it'll make a big difference, of course.
Sure. I mean, it came because I remember reading somewhere that this where they said that in New York at the Empire State Building, they probably make as much money from the observance desk as they make from the offices out there. So, I think once it's privatized, there is really whole more of churn that is likely to come in, and a better experience for a customer eventually goes to such sites.
I mean, there's so many opportunities. We have rivers. Unfortunately, Delhi, of course, is black now. But imagine all the development you can do across, the riverside in many, many cities and
Correct.
states,
Absolutely.
and
Huge,
the
huge.
government can earn so much money to privatization of so many other things. We still don't have enough entertainment, which can be developed in the
Hotspots,
cities.
yes.
To many other things. So it's a massive. I'm actually I'm glad you asked that question, because normally people don't talk about it. So it's a great question and it's a great opportunity, I feel.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Magazine. It's been wonderful talking to you. And I think the forecast that you've given, we really see that those predictions coming true in 21. And now we're almost in the fag end of 2020 and hope it ends right here because we don't want this extended anymore. And hopefully next year will only bring better and more positive changes for the real estate sector. Thank you very much for joining us
Thank you
today.
for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Magazine, and thank you so much, Ms. Maria. Well, towards the end, I would request Ms. Maria for the vote of thanks of the event. So if I could have a few words from you, Ms. Maria, over to you.
Thanks again, Bhavna. And I think I've been attending most of the sessions today, and I think what great analysis that came out. I remember attending a lot of real estate sessions when we were in the early days of lockdown, and we were having, sort of total unawareness as to how the industry is going to bounce back. But today I've only seen positive words, whether they've been the builders, whether they've been, people like Mr. Magazine, who are sort of giving maintenance as well as consultative forecasts about the industry. But I've already seen that, as mentioned today by a lot of our speakers, that residential real estate is certainly bouncing back at the top speed, and of course, interest rates being low has all been very helpful. Indeed, we want to see similar sparks in the commercial real estate sector as well as in the retail real estate sector. And I think once, only when the fear of the pandemic and the vaccine coming in is going to sort of take hold, we will see all these changes happening too. So I do feel that everybody in the industry is only for a more positive and better 2021. The 20th, so to say, our 20 series need to be better than the way we have started this decade. But I think there are positive changes ahead for the industry. And what I'm most glad is that nobody is talking about how pandemic is going to take us down, but rather how are we going to get back up and back into business. And that is what has always made me sort of see the resilience of this industry, and the way they have planned ahead. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And please stay tuned with us here at Franchise India as we bring you more and more on the real estate sector in the coming days, and more content and more thought leaders who will share about how they see and envision the industry forward. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Maria. Well, absolutely perfectly summarized the entire day. And it is all about the positive direction which everyone's taking. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, I now officially conclude with our 12th annual Estate Awards and Summit. Thank you once again for joining us on behalf of Remax and Franchise India. Thank you for giving us your valuable time.